Welcome to the Each One, Reach One podcast, built on the belief that change begins with just one. We celebrate purpose, resilience, and the ripple that one life can create.
Welcome to the podcast for Each One, Reach One. I'm Mark Cooper. I'm a retired professor in Conway. I'm a licensed professional counselor and co-founder of the nonprofit Chicks for Children. I'm the co-host with Ray Wasiki, who lives in Kitale, Kenya, for the Each One, Reach One podcast. Our purpose is to highlight people. Well, today you'll find out not necessarily all people, but we're going to, for the most part, highlight people who make differences in the lives of others. Sometimes I think we take for granted the differences. We want to make them more obvious. We want demonstrations of compassion and kindness to be seen and to be heard. And so here we are, my first podcast interview, and I am thrilled to have as the interviewee Kristin for a number of reasons. First, I know enough about Kristin to know that she has spent decades, as many as 48 years, at the Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. And she has been a champion of children, not only within the San Diego region, but she's been a champion of children all over the country. There's another reason that is, I'll say, even more special. And that is, Kristin's my sister. Yes, she's my sister. And so I have the pleasure and the honor to be able to interview my sister at this time. And what I'd like to do is Kristin, if you could tell us about your roles and responsibilities over the many years. What have you done to champion the children?
Well, I started off as a Head Start teacher back when Head Start teachers were brand new. And then I went to grad school, and I started working at Rady Children's Hospital in 1974, evaluating children that had graduated from the neonatal intensive care unit. Neonatal intensive care units were brand new. They were saving babies that could never have survived. And I did that for many years, evaluating them for development and early childhood mental health, attachment, all the things that can befall a young baby that had a hard start in life. And over the course of the first 24 years, I learned all kinds of things about children's needs. In the 70s, it was the effects of prematurity and what do children need after experiencing prematurity. And in the 80s, crystal meth labs came up, and I needed to learn what we do to help children with prenatal drug exposure. And in the 90s, there was a surge of more children with signs of autism, but not meeting all the criteria. And what are the needs of children with autism? So in the late 90s, I became director of a new division called Developmental Services and spent the next 25 years really trying to integrate services for children. Children are not body parts. It didn't make sense to me to have speech therapy in one building and occupational therapy in another building and physical therapy all in different places. And so we brought them all together eventually under one roof. It was a big roof. There were about 400 employees that did this work: early childhood prevention, early childhood intervention, child abuse prevention, physical therapy, speech therapy, audiology. All those kinds of services needed to be housed together and sometimes provided together to help children grow to their potential and to help parents feel supported and not afraid. That was my job.
Well, I tell you what, you can't question my credibility. I did say that she championed children, and that's heir apparent, no doubt about that. And I'm really glad that she didn't usurp my surprise. For normally you would think, well, we're talking about each one reach one, making differences in the lives of others being people. Well, in this case, that is not the case. I mean, obviously, I could have an interview just with Kristin because she is the difference maker. But Kristin is also the handler for Ollie. And Ollie is a therapy dog.
Now to one hospital in the American state of California that is roping in man's best friend to support children as they receive their COVID-19 shot. Take a look at Ollie, the 6-year-old golden doodle therapy dog. He has one job: to sit beside kids and distract them as they get vaccinated. The hope is that some doggy love will help the children overcome their fear of needles. American kids aged between 5 and 11 have become the first in the world to be eligible for COVID-19 inoculations.
How did Ollie emerge? Because I'm a person who loves dogs and know that dogs are first puppies. So where did Ollie come into play?
Well, Ollie was born in 2015. And I was getting pretty old. I knew someday I would have to retire. And I'd spent all my adult life at Rady Children's Hospital, and I loved my work. And I knew that the word congratulations on your retirement was not going to touch my heart. It was going to touch my tears. And so I decided that for the first time in my life, I had a dog that was not only well-trained, but he was sweet and calm and kind. And so as Ollie grew up, still a puppy, I decided that Ollie had the capability to be a canine therapy dog. And we had a program like that at Rady Children's Hospital. And I thought, this is something I can start now before I'm ready to retire. And then I have a transition of something that I really love when I leave. And so I was a handler of a canine therapy dog on the team for 6 years before I retired. And Ollie and I have been together for 4 years since, because when I retired, sure enough, people would say congratulations, and I would burst into tears. And I thought, I'll never tell someone congratulations on their retirement. I'm going to instead say, how is that for you? I think that's a better thing to say to someone who's retired. But the good news is that Ollie and I are able to continue to have purpose and to make a difference. Now, Ollie doesn't know that. Ollie just knows that he likes to cuddle with kids and curl up in a patient's bed. And although it's against the rules, every now and then reach out and lick them. Ollie just makes people feel better. And he and I really enjoy our work. So I have a 10-year-old dog who's still going strong. Every other week, we get to visit patients at Rady Children's. That's how he came into the picture.
So you can see there's no retirement in Kristin at this point. That's a wonderful story. Wonderful story. In terms of the training, I mean, was it lengthy? Was it hard? Did Ollie behave at the very beginning?
Well, usually in this program, dogs aren't tested until they're 3.
Yeah, okay.
But Ollie and I started in the program when he was 17 months old. Because Ollie was, I've trained all my dogs. I've trained all my dogs along the way. But Ollie was particularly good at making eye contact, holding eye contact, and always looking to see what I wanted and what he could do to comply. It was easy to train Ollie. And so he was very well trained, but he was still a puppy. He still didn't mind chewing up a sock or stealing a stick of butter. It wasn't very good for him. But he was just a very social, friendly, and very calm dog. And that calmness is what's key. I really believe that when you're deciding, it's not like you can select a therapy dog because you don't know how a dog's going to develop, just like you don't know how a child's going to develop. But when you are evaluating your dog to be a therapy dog or not, it's really about not so much the training, which you have to have. He has to be a Canine Good Citizen certified dog. He has to pass tests. But temperament makes all the difference.
Wouldn't it be great if all the children were like that? If that's not going to be the case. And I say that in jest, of course. You made reference to Ollie being a difference maker. And could you give us some examples of the different ways that Ollie made differences? Because, I've been part of the hospital life because I'm a parent who's had kids and so forth, but not anything at your level of opportunity and experience and so forth. What kinds of things did you and Ollie do within departments, or were there some children you work with more than others?
So we visit the children with cancer, and we spend a good deal of time on the first thing we have to do is we go to the nurse's station, and she has to decide who can have a visit, because if a child's labs are too concerning, they can't have a visit. But we get to find out who can have a visit. And at Rady Children's Hospital, different from an adult hospital, we have to have a team of 2 because someone has to be in charge of making sure that the child is going to be comfortable before they see the dog, and also to be sure we have consent of the parents. Now, they should be consented when they come into the hospital so that we can visit if a parent is not there. But usually a parent or family member is there. And so we go in and, make sure, would you like to have Ollie, the canine therapy dog, visit you? And most children are delighted. Most parents are delighted. It's like a real refreshing respite. Now and after, I'll kind of big picture, after we finish that floor, we go to the medical and surgical patients floor. There are many more children that we can visit on that floor, but they're there for shorter periods of time. But we often have to be more careful because we have appendectomies and broken legs. And so we have to make sure it's safe to be in the child's bed if the child wants that, or you may need to be on a chair next to the bed. It's just a little different milieu. The third floor would be the medical behavioral unit. And we don't always get to visit there because we may not have time, or we may be called over to visit children in the ICU or the cardiac ICU. So that's one of the things that we do. But another thing we've done is that during COVID, pediatricians noticed that their patients with autism were not getting their vaccines. They were terrified and so problematic, so resistant that parents couldn't get them to take their shots. So we established COVID vaccine clinics for children with autism and other children with sensory sensitivities that made it harder for them to get a shot. And we advertised online and on radio and other ways on our website that we had dogs, and children love animals. Children with autism in particular resonate with animals. They are not confusing. And so we had full clinics of children with autism. And those were my departments too. So we were able to train the nurses who were giving the vaccines and the doctors who were volunteering and giving the vaccines how to help make the shot easier for the child with autism. For example, find out immediately what they're interested in. And if it's the solar system, talk about the planets. If it's the dog, use the dog. So Ollie has done a great deal to help children with autism get their COVID vaccines. He's gone to therapy appointments before. We have a preschool inclusion program for children with autism. He was there just last week. So in addition to our hospital rounds, this is another way Ollie makes a difference.
You know, it reminds me of taking the home into the hospital in many respects. It warms my heart to just imagine Ollie cuddling up with kids and also just helping with their anxieties and fears. The need is great. What about just a memorable experience that you had with a particular child?
Well, there's another boy who had cancer, and he had other reasons as well to have a service dog. And his service dog looked very much like Ollie, looked just like Ollie, but a different color. And his service dog probably could have come to the hospital because he was really a service dog, not one that gets a vest from Amazon. But he didn't, because he and the parents felt that it would be too upsetting for the dog. But he really resonated with Ollie. He really loved Ollie's visits. And in fact, as he became sicker and sicker, when my escort would ask, "Would you like a visit from a dog?" he would say, "Which dog?" And of course, if it was Asher, maybe the answer was no, and Asher probably felt kind of sad. But if it was Ollie, Ollie always got a visit.
Right. Made a difference.
Made a difference for the family. I mean, they really appreciated so much. And there are other times when a child, more often a teenage boy, I have to say, might say, "Oh, no, I don't need a dog visit." The parents will say, "But I do. I need a dog visit," and they will get down and hug the dog. I mean, there was a dad in the ICU recently where his child was too small and too sick to have a dog visit, and he came out and just hugged the dog and just sobbing. And he had had some hard news, and he needed that comfort, and it was easier to have that comfort from a dog than a person.
Well, Kristin, I think of medical treatment is often, it's considered more of a physical kind of treatment, pharmacology and, various interventions like that. And, I can't help but think about the emotional health of kids in relation to recovery. Well, you have to have the chemotherapy to recover, or the radiation, or various other medicines. But it begs the question, what is your thought about just recovery and their emotional health, and Ollie being such an important part of their emotional and social health?
Well, I think Ollie could be more impactful if he were able to be there longer. And Rady Children's is working on a resident dog program where they have a dog that lives there. So a long-term child would get to know a dog over time. But they do get to know the dogs. And I can remember a little girl about 9 years old that had a very serious situation with requiring an appendectomy. She was at camp and was complaining of a stomach ache, and it was assumed that it was homesickness. And so things got to be much more serious. And she was very upset, had been in a great deal of pain and very emotional in the hospital. And her family just couldn't help her calm down. She was just so irritable and upset. And Ollie came in, and it was over the course of 15, 20 minutes, kind of a long visit. She was completely calm and happy in herself. Her parents just saw a transformation in that child. The dog just brought her from irritability to normalcy in a matter of 15 or 20 minutes. So it happens. It's not common that you'd see that kind of a transformation, but especially after an appendectomy, she should be recovering. And she just couldn't because she'd been in so much pain for so long at a summer camp where she didn't have her parents.
You've been such an integral part of children who are hospitalized. Do you have some suggestions for families who are part of the listening and viewing audience? Do you have some suggestions for them as they anticipate their child, maybe today or maybe next week, going into the hospital?
Well, I think, first of all, it's like you hear on the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on your child. I think they have to take care of themselves. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to get ourselves in a good place, because if our anxiety is high, our child's anxiety is going to be even higher. So the more preparation, the better. We can do that in the process of preparing the child, but we're preparing ourselves. And so as the parent becomes more comfortable with what's going to happen, they can be a support for the parents, for the child, without saying another word.
I love the example. I really do. It makes perfect sense. I'd like to go back for a sec. You were talking about the kids with autism, and I know that you've had a great deal of experience with children and families with autism. I can't help but believe that some of the families right now are, wanting to ask, what are some thoughts, even Ali aside, what are some thoughts that you have about their care for their child with autism? I mean, I know that's a general question, but
Well, early intervention makes the biggest difference. And it's very hard to move into a worry. It's very reassuring if a family goes to a pediatrician and they say, well, let's wait a year and take a look. I've seen children start talking and just get better. But there is so much research. There's even research that shows that a child who starts intervention at 18 months has a better outcome than a child who starts at 27 months. That's specific. So I just say there's almost nothing to lose. In fact, you become less fearful when you have more information. Even though it sounds scary, knowing more and knowing how to help really alleviates everyone's anxiety, and a child has a better opportunity.
I hope that helps. I can only imagine how much that would help me, and so we hope that it helps you. Um, I want to imagine for a sec hospital administrators listening to this podcast. And you've had administrators, I'm sure, become very supportive of this program. And I suspect throughout the country that there are some hospital administrators who are doubting Thomases, who, maybe question it's not feasible, it's not affordable, any number of reasons. What might you say to a hospital administrator who does not necessarily value as much, for whatever reason, good or bad? What might you suggest to them?
Just to learn more. There are lots of hospitals doing this. There are hospitals that have volunteer programs like ours, and there are hospital programs that have resident dog programs. It's really to learn more. I think there is some cost associated because there's organizing the volunteers, training the volunteers, having a vet come in and do the testing every year. But we're all volunteers. So the whole team of handlers and escorts, we're all volunteers. And so it's a relatively inexpensive program. We've had sponsorships in the past. I'm sure we'll have sponsorships in the future. We have cards. All the dogs have a card. When they come into the program, there's a professional photographer who probably offers her time. And you go to a studio And the dog does his tricks and poses and looks adorable, and this is what comes of it. And the children collect these cards. So a child in for an appendectomy has one card and remembers that dog. A child with cancer may collect all 20 dogs' cards.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a very special thing. In fact, on our website, there was, I don't think it's a public-facing website. It's the children who are in the hospital enough to be going to school at the hospital. A boy wrote a poem, a long poem, almost like a song, and included the names of all the dogs. It was an ode to the dogs, so to speak. So for the children that have a lot of experience at the hospital, this program is so important. And this is their badge. I mean, they'll have their hospital room window lined with the dogs or up on their whiteboard.
Yeah. So there's just cause, administrators, yeah, pay attention. Pay attention. There's one final question that actually I'm probably as interested in asking as any, because we've talked about the difference that Ollie makes in the lives of others. And I've made reference to what I know the difference that you make in the lives of others, to and through Ollie as an example, as you continue to work and resist full retirement. What difference has Ollie made on you?
Well, I've loved all my dogs. And I can't say I love one more than the other. But I can say that Ollie has the best combination of all traits. And that's very special. Ollie greets me with a big stuffed animal in his mouth every time I come in the house. In fact, if I just go downstairs for a while, he forgets that I'm just really home, and he comes back with a big monkey or a big lamb chop in his mouth to share with me. He loves his routines. So he knows he's going to go out before bedtime. And then I say it's time for bed, and he runs and gets in his bed and waits for his couple of kibble that he gets to have at bedtime. He's so compliant. I can walk in figure eights and circles, and he will never bump into me. I will never be able to trip over Ollie. He will make sure that he's watching me so closely. So yes, he's very synchronized, I would say, with me. He just and he loves everyone. I mean, he is a very stealable dog because he would go with anyone. The deliveryman wagging his tail and so excited to see each one of them. There's nobody who will ever be afraid of Ollie.
Wow. That's amazing. Oh my goodness, I could go on and on and on. But to bring it to a close, I mean, first I have to express, my appreciation for you and Ollie, and the fact that you continue to extend your reach to children in the hospital, and that you allow Ollie to do what Ollie loves to do. There's a song that comes to mind.
You're not going to sing it.
No, I'm not going to sing it. My wife has discouraged that. I was tempted. She said, "No, Mark, don't go there." But the song is, "You Got a Friend in Me."
Oh, yeah.
You got a friend in me. Gosh, I'm almost about to sing it, but I resist. But I think about that song in all seriousness. Ollie certainly has a friend, and all the children, and all the children certainly have a friend in Ollie. And my goodness, with all of us seeking friendship, whew, Ollie has a whole lot of friends.
Well, I know you're closing, but I have to say we didn't talk about the staff and the impact of a dog on the staff when they've lost a patient or they've had a wave of terrible accidents from e-bikes or the things that are happening, in the moment, the things that are the contemporary accidents that are coming their way. And I had a request. My shift is next Wednesday, and I had a request to come in an hour early just to go into the emergency department lounge because they've had a very rough few weeks. So the staff also deserves, needs, seeks the comfort of the dogs.
Absolutely, and I'm thankful that you brought up the staff, and I get that. I mean, we're kids, and we grow up, but we don't grow out of that kind of response to an Ollie in our lives. Again, I applaud Ollie for Ollie's heroism, and I do the same for you. Yes, I'm biased. You are my sister, and I know firsthand that Kristin has made a difference in the lives of so many, including our family. I do want to sign off, but a tradition in my signing off is I want to say this, and it's a quote that's near and dear, one that I will always remind you of, and that is, don't wait for a difference maker. Go make a difference. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to the Each One Reach One podcast. Go into your day knowing that your life, your words, your action can spark purpose, bring hope, and inspire change. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to hear more stories.